CCM is holding our third annual Representation Matters two-day training in collaboration with the Campaign School at Yale University on February 25th and March 4th. In just the first 2 years, we have seen hundreds of interested individuals get the tools to help them on their journey to local elected office or service on a board or commission. This week, we're joined by Patty Russo, the director of the Campaign School, and Karen Dubois-Walton of the Housing Authority of the City of New Haven to talk about why representation matters to them. If you want to register for Representation Matters, our free virtual two-day training is open to everyone. Visit us at ccmcares.com for more information. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. The Municipal Voice is a Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders. Patty, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here, Matt.
This is our third year working together on Representation Matters, and you've been our trustee partner throughout. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Campaign School at Yale?
Sure. So I have been the lucky executive director of the Campaign School at Yale for about 15 years now. We were founded right after that first year of the woman, 1992, Matt. Mm-hmm. And you may recall, if you were born at that time, that
I was in high school.
So many women that were running for Congress, both on the Democratic and Republican side nationally. It was so exciting. And the majority of the women that were running that year won. Yeah. So many of us who have been actively involved politically, especially on the front of getting more women in the pipeline and getting them elected, we're really feeling excited. It's like, wow, we have finally smashed that glass ceiling. And now, as a result of all these women running and winning, we're going to see all these women saying, hey, why not me? Why not me? Except we didn't. So 1993 was very flat. And so our founder, a woman by the name of Andre Allian Brooks from Westport, Connecticut, got a group of us together, Rosa DeLauro, a former Congresswoman, Nancy Johnson, you may recall from the 5th Congressional District. Myself, I was head of the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women at the time, and just a whole group of women leaders to talk about what is it going to take to get more women in the pipeline in a really thoughtful, conscientious way. And so we started brainstorming. We started meeting and talking about our dream campaign school, right? We knew we wanted it to be issue neutral, nonpartisan. We knew we wanted to mimic the energy of a true political campaign. We knew we wanted to attract the best in the business, and the best way to do that is to be housed at Yale. So fortunately, we went marching over to then Dean Guido Calabresi's office at the law school and made our pitch. And he said, gosh, this sounds amazing. I'll give you 1 year. And that was 28 years ago.
Okay, so with the pandemic, a group of you came to Yale. Yale didn't.
Yes, we went. Rosa went in, and Nancy Johnson, and those of us who know Rosa, right? She represents New Haven, the 3rd Congressional District. Well, it's easier to say yes to Rosa DeLauro than to say no. So he said yes, and he said, "I'll give you 1 year," and that was 28 years ago. So our first class was in 1994. And of course, we had the little thing called the pandemic, Matt, that kind of got in the way. But so the first year of the pandemic, we offered free online campaign training to anyone who found themselves in the unfortunate predicament of running for public office in the middle of a pandemic. Who knew how to do that, right? So it was our way of paying it forward. And then the last 2 years, we've been able to offer our 5-day intensive live online. So we knew we had connected with the right candidates when we found 80 students who thought 4 days of 12-hour, 4 days of 12-hour days and 1 day of an 8-hour day was their idea of a good time, right?
He's a special kind of person,
Exactly. So we are thrilled that this year we are back at the law school. We're back on campus. We're so excited to welcome our class, our 28th class of the campaign school at Yale on the Yale Law School campus the week of June 12th to the 16th.
Excellent.
I want to talk a minute about our evolution because I think it speaks so well about our
So yeah,
connection
as you said,
and
initially
how
you were
we got
focused,
to this
yeah,
point,
you were
CCM
aimed
and us.
at women candidates, as you said, but then you're saying with
Exactly.
with the start of
So
the pandemic is when you shifted to helping other kind of underrepresented historically communities. Is
we
that
have always, so here's our story.
okay?
So back in 1994, which was first class,
Hmm.
the majority of the women who attended our program at that time were white women,
Hmm.
Matt, predominantly white women in their mid 40s. So they had launched their kids. They had always been politically active and it's
Hmm.
like, now's my turn, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's when they decided to either come because they were interested in running for office or come because they were interested in campaign management, because that
Hmm.
is another program that we offer. The program is really for women interested in running for office and women
Hmm.
interested in campaign management, because we don't have enough women in either
Yeah.
venues, right? Other ways. Fast forward to last year. So little by little, about 15 years ago, we started to see more and more women of color attending our school.
Hmm.
And so right now, last year, the median age of a woman attending our school is, I don't know, 30,
Hmm.
31. And the majority of the women who attend our school are women of color. And we're really proud of that, Matt. You know what?
Yeah.
That doesn't just happen,
Hmm.
right? Women of color have found a happy home at our school. Our number one resource of students are other women of color who are grads of our
Hmm.
school, saying, this place is amazing. You know, you will
Yeah.
be well trained and you will be taken care of. So the culture is as important. The culture we create is as
Hmm.
important as the training. So that's a snapshot.
Yeah.
3 years ago, we changed our name from the Women's Campaign School at
Hmm.
Yale to the Campaign School at Yale, because we started getting more and more calls from non-binary individuals
Hmm.
who wanted to attend the school, and from men who are like, hey, I need to come to your school. I'm running a campaign for a woman.
Hmm.
I know that there are challenges that women face that I have no idea about. I
Hmm.
need to be well prepared. And so while we've always, we don't discriminate, we've always accepted non-binary individuals and
Hmm.
men. The name change makes us more open and welcoming.
Yeah.
However, our mission remains the same, which
Hmm.
is to increase the number of women in the political pipeline. So if
Hmm.
you're about that, apply.
That's a good pitch. I like that one. So as you said, you've been at this for a while and mostly historically aimed at women. And over these, 20, eight, going on, coming up on 30 years here, you've had some pretty notable alumni. Can you give us a couple of stories of some of the famous people that have come through your doors?
Just amazing, amazing individuals. And we're so proud of the way in which they lead in the world. And, I love it when people start talking about a grad and I say, she's one of ours. She's
Yeah.
ours. Oh, that's ours. She's ours. Of course, let's start right in our hometown of New Haven, Connecticut. Former Mayor Tony Hart, who
Hmm.
became the first woman of color, female, to ever serve as mayor in the city, is
Hmm.
one of our grads. Caroline Simmons, who's mayor of Stamford,
Yep.
Connecticut, one of the largest cities in our state,
Hmm.
is one of ours. First female, again, there's a trend here you'll see, Matt.
Yeah.
First female, Shantae Hanks, who's deputy commissioner for the for housing department. Ned Lamont grabbed her, right? The governor
Hmm.
saw that talent and said, hey, I need her up in Hartford. She's one of our grads. Wendy Tyson Wood of Waterbury is the new president of the NAACP there.
Hmm.
First woman to be the head of the NAACP. On the national level, so we have women serving and leading at all levels,
Hmm.
local, state, and federal. I
Yeah.
want to talk about Lauren Underwood. Lauren
Okay.
Underwood from Illinois. came to our school in 2014.
Hmm.
And she said, Patty, you're going to see me one day. I am going to run for office. Now, she didn't realize it was going to be so soon after she graduated from our school, but the opportunity presented itself, Matt.
Hmm.
So she called me one day in 2017 and said, I'm running. I'm running for Congress. Now, her district, which is Illinois 14, is a predominantly white district.
Hmm.
But she was determined. She got into a primary, a Democratic primary with 6 or 7 white men.
Hmm.
And she worked and worked and worked. And of course, she had been trained by us, so she knew what she was doing. And
Yeah.
she blew it out of the water. She won big. She won that primary big. And then she went on to win the general election, unseating a 20-year incumbent on the
Hmm.
Republican side. She then became, as a result of that success, she became the first African American female, of course, to serve in that district, but
Hmm.
also was the youngest African American woman ever elected to Congress.
Oh, that's very
We're
cool.
so proud of her, and now she's in leadership
Hmm.
in the Democratic caucus.
Excellent. That's very cool. And I think when hearing you talk about all these, first, the first women in these positions, it's interesting because, why is this program important? Because, so many of these people are the first to do it, so they don't necessarily have someone to follow their example for locally that's already done it. So the training can help them to become the first.
Absolutely.
It's
Not
very
the
cool stuff.
last, not the
Not
last,
the
Matt,
last,
but the
but
first.
so it's pretty clear that, an individual can find the tools to success from the campaign school. You've been doing this for a while now. Can you kind of tell when someone has it, the certain it factor, and when someone doesn't? Or, can anyone learn these skills?
I think anyone can learn these skills. I really
Hmm.
do. You have to have a passion for politics. If you don't have a passion for it,
Hmm.
it's so hard. It's so hard when you do have a passion, Matt,
Hmm.
when you do have the skills, when you do have the network, it's hard enough.
Hmm.
But I can pretty much tell, I've been doing this for a long time now, and I
Hmm.
love it. I can pretty much tell when
Hmm.
somebody walks into my office to have coffee with me, the
Hmm.
way in which they present themselves, if this is a good idea for them right now.
Hmm.
It may not be, but we can always help them talk about what they need to do to prepare for a run.
Hmm.
There are a variety of different things that you can do to prepare for a run.
Yeah.
Back in 2017, after Donald Trump was elected, you may recall the March on Washington, right?
Hmm.
The really global march at that
Hmm.
time. And at that time, there were so many women calling us excited. They had gone to the march. We started getting all these calls
Hmm.
at the school. I'm mad. I marched. I want to run for office. When's your
Hmm.
next class? Right.
Yeah.
So my idea of a good time on a Sunday is to return those kinds of calls, Matt. I was so excited. And so I started returning those calls, and they went something like this. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm from Ohio, and I'm mad. I marched. I want to run for office. Call me
Yeah.
back. And I called her back. And I said, Hi, Anna. Where are you registered to vote in Ohio? Oh, I'm not registered to vote. You're not registered to vote. No, I'm not, but I'm mad. I'm mad now. Well, Anna, you're not coming to the school. I'm going to save you the $65 application fee. You are not coming. I'm going to tell you where to register to vote, and then I'm going to give you a local political homework assignment.
Yeah.
And you're either going to be inspired and excited and energized by that or not. So a
Hmm.
third of the women who reached out to us after that march, Matt,
Hmm.
weren't registered to vote. The
Hmm.
second third were registered to vote, but didn't vote in the presidential that year because, quote, the two candidates were so similar, I couldn't make up my mind.
Hmm.
So 2/3 of those who had reached out to us after that march were not ready for a 5-day intensive with us.
Yeah.
But they were ready for a 1-day intensive, and that's where you and I come in with
Hmm.
CCM. That's when we created the Campaign School at Yale, the Basics, which is a 1-day intensive. And
Hmm.
so my whole thing about the 1-day training is if you have a newly discovered passion for politics,
Hmm.
join us. If you want to run for office someday, you think, join us. If
Hmm.
you want to work on a campaign, join us. If you want to learn how to be a more effective leader on an issue you feel passionately about in your community, join
Hmm.
us so that people can see there are a variety of different paths to
Yeah.
leadership. You just need to choose one.
Yeah. And that's a good point, I think, is that, for people who are thinking about maybe coming, that you don't necessarily have to want to run for mayor or for selectman of
Mhm.
your town or senator or whatever. You could be interested in helping a campaign or being on a board or a committee or something like that. So there's a lot of
Correct.
different ways.
There's
For
not
people.
one path. And that's what's so great
Mhm.
about the one day too. I have a phenomenal group of our grads who are coming this year on February
Mhm.
25th as part of a panel discussion.
Yeah.
And one is on the Board of Education, and others are city council people. So they're all representing their individual constituencies on the local level, which
Mhm.
is the focus this year for our training.
Over the past couple of years doing this program together, one thing that we've kind of heard come up a few times, in talking to people that have run campaigns and stuff, is fundraising, knocking on
Mhm.
doors, making calls for appeals for support, which is certainly something that's intimidating. It might make it difficult for some people, even people who might potentially be really good politicians. Is there any way around fundraising?
No, there is not. No. Everyone that I know is for campaign finance reform. Everyone
Hmm.
who is, talk to any of our members of Congress in Connecticut, our US senators, everybody's for campaign finance reform.
Hmm.
But until we have it, Matt, everyone has to achieve a level of comfort and confidence fundraising. It's
Hmm.
just the reality when you run for office. Now, again, it's a technique. It's a skill. And
Hmm.
that's something we're definitely going to be talking about on Saturday, February 25th. How do you
Hmm.
put the fun in fundraising? How do you shift your energy so it's not drudgery and
Hmm.
you're not fearful, right? What kinds of ways can I inspire others to invest in my candidacy,
Hmm.
right? To make a difference in our community. It's really all about language.
Yeah. It's how you frame it, how you think about it, and how you put
Mhm.
yourself out there.
I'll say to women, you're not looking for money so that you can go to St. Bart's for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're looking for make an investment in our community. Here's my vision. Here's my vision for our community. I want to make it better. Will
Yeah.
you partner with me? Right? Will you lead with me?
Hmm.
That's very compelling language, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah,
Don't you
definitely.
want to?
Yeah, if you're coming at it from the angle of I want to serve my community and I need your help in order to do that, not
Mhm.
give me money, but give
Mhm.
our cause,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
whatever
Our
money. Yeah.
community, make an
Yeah.
investment to make it better. It's pretty heady stuff. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. The Representation Matters program that we work on together is aimed at communities of color. We want to make sure that people know it's open to everyone to, learn, listen, attend. But for our communities of color, for women, they haven't had access to the same tools, resources that white men have historically.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that there hasn't been qualified people from these communities. How much does the electorate have to change?
They have to change, and it is changing, it's not changing as quickly as we'd like, Matt.
Hmm.
Connecticut is the land of steady habits,
Yeah.
right? So things move slowly, but we're definitely seeing a shift. Look at
Hmm.
all the women that we have on the state level who are serving as our constitutionals, right?
Yeah.
Susan Bisowitz, Stephanie Thomas. I mean, how exciting is that, right?
Yeah.
More and more women serving as state senators and state reps. It's happening. It's
Hmm.
just not happening as quickly as we would like it to be. So that's why
Yeah.
these trainings, these opportunities are so important and so critical. Let me think about it. Let me just put my toe in the water. Let me just go to a training,
Hmm.
not make a commitment, just kind of see where maybe I would have the opportunity to lead in my community. That's why it's so important. Our structure, our political structure, was not made for women and people of color
Hmm.
to succeed, Matt. Our structure was made for white men to succeed.
Hmm.
And you know what? They've done really well. Now we're seeing more and more white people, women and men, wanting to serve as partners and
Hmm.
allies to our people of color who are running for office. And that just, I think, helps to make a world of difference.
Hmm.
This is not, it's got to be a collaborative effort in order to
Yeah.
be successful and effective. Lauren Underwood is a perfect example
Yeah.
of that. She had to turn to her allies and partners in her district because there are so few people of color in her district.
Yeah. And just getting the message out there that representation and increasing diversity doesn't just benefit those communities, but benefits all of us.
It benefits everyone. It benefits everyone. It lifts everybody up. That's what's so exciting about the work, is
Yeah.
to see it, to see how effective that the process has been.
Yeah. And we talk about the excitement. We've mentioned how hard it can be, intimidating, that it maybe is not for everyone. These are, pretty heady topics. But do you get a sense that some of the people taking your class, and representation matters, or your other classes, are having fun?
They're having a blast. I try to make it fun. I like having a good time, Matt. Believe me. I don't shy away from doing hard things, but if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. It is so much fun. I love it. So the Monday of class, our
Hmm.
5 day, I'll say to our students, now they're coming from all over the country and the world.
Hmm.
They're meeting each other for the first time. They're at Yale Law School. Those of you who have been seated at Yale Law School just know how you feel when you're at Yale Law School.
Hmm.
You're being trained by the best and the brightest in our country, both on the Democratic and Republican side.
Hmm.
It's pretty exciting. And so I will say to our students that Monday morning that by Wednesday they're not going to recognize themselves just by virtue of having this experience. They'll start feeling energized. They'll start feeling confident, more secure as a result of all of the training that they're receiving, the experiences of sharing stories with other students,
Yeah.
right? We had an amazing moment that I'd love to share back in 2019, which was
Hmm.
the last time we were at Yale Law School. So there was a student from downtown Atlanta, Georgia,
Hmm.
talking about voter suppression in her community. How on
Hmm.
election day, the voting machines don't work, the line's out the door, and then at the stroke of 7 o'clock, the doors close and you can't vote. And there was another student from Alpharetta, Georgia, which is a very
Hmm.
different, community, right outside of Atlanta, who
Hmm.
said, "Gee, I've never had that experience on election day in Alpharetta. All of
Hmm.
our machines work. We get people through the line pretty quickly. I don't know what you're talking about." And so
Yeah.
the student from Atlanta, invited the student from Alpharetta to
Hmm.
join her in her district on election day.
Hmm.
And so now that student from Alpharetta has become a phenomenal ally and effective spokesperson on behalf of, wow, not everything is equal.
Yeah.
My experience is my experience. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same experience for others.
Hmm.
That's the kind of amazing connection that we create for our students at our school.
Yeah. The connections, the empathy for others. It's all.
Exactly. Exactly. The other thing that we offer to our students long after the 5 days, they have an amazing time, but long after the 5 days, we are a phone call, a Zoom, a meeting away from our students. The political climate has gotten pretty mean-spirited,
Hmm.
but our students know that we are always a phone call away. Patty, I'm
Yeah.
having a crazy day on in my district, campaigning. I need 10 minutes.
Hmm.
We are the safety net for our grads, because it's just gotten really, really tough out there. And
Yeah.
the majority of our students, I want to say, this cycle, they won. They ran and they won. So we're really proud of our track record. I think that the way in which we serve
Hmm.
the uh, is everything. And I think that this is the way in which you can be prepared to serve effectively.
Hmm.
Again, the business of politics has gotten very complicated, Matt, and very
Yeah.
expensive, right? Why
Hmm.
not secure yourself for success? Why not learn how to effectively run a campaign, effectively run for office, prepare for a run for office,
Hmm.
prepare to lead on an issue that's going on in your community that you feel
Hmm.
passionately about. Why not do that? You know, everything is political in life. I love it when people say to me, "Oh, Patty, it's so great you're so political."
Hmm.
Not me. And I just think they're missing out because everything in life is political.
Yeah.
Your work, negotiating with your kids and your spouse, everything is political. So why not make it work to your advantage? That's what I do.
This year, like the first year, this is our third year, we're focusing specifically kind of on running for local office, municipal,
Mhm.
offices, boards, that kind of stuff. Last year, we focused a little bit more on some state politics stuff to kind of coincide with the election cycles. We're all looking forward to it. And the first day is going to be February 25th, right?
Coming up.
And also, of course, day two will be on March 4th. And they can also find out about some of that at ccm-ct.org. Well, Patty Russo with the campaign school at Yale University, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We
My
always like
pleasure,
talking to you,
Matt.
and we're looking
My
forward to
pleasure.
another great, representation
It's going
matters.
to be phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
it is just amazing. We've got it down, and everyone is, talking it up already, which has really
Hmm.
been exciting. I can't tell you how many emails and calls I've gotten about February 25th and March 4th. So it's all good.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM.
¿Desea un cambio en su pueblo o ciudad? Representar la comunidad es importante y todos merecen una oportunidad. CCM and the Campaign School en Yale están organizando Representation Matters, una sesión gratis el 25 de febrero y el 4 de marzo. Para registrarse, visite hoy ccmcares.com.
Karen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Good to have you, as always. So last time we had you on the show back in September, it was before the election. And, due to your many hats, we talked about things like affordable housing, we talked about education. And one thing we touched on a little bit back then was representation in government and some of the issues we have in Connecticut with that and other kind of equity issues. So we've asked you back today in advance of a program that we're doing. We've done it for the past 2 years, and we're doing it again this year called Representation Matters, which is a program we're doing with the campaign school at Yale, which seeks to open doors to people in communities of color, with give them the know-how on how to run for office. As someone of an expert in this topic, you've run some hard-fought races over the years. What motivates you to run for office?
Oh, I am so happy to be able to talk about the Representation Matters and the series of sessions, because I do agree it's so important. And I got into public service in general because of a real calling to serve my community in ways that started around city government and then moved into working directly on housing, and just seeing up close and personal the power that government has in decisions that impact people's everyday lives. And I laugh every time I hear somebody sort of say, "Oh, I don't do politics," because the work that politics governs and dictates and decides is important in everything that we do. And so I jumped in public policy in general, and then more specifically as a candidate, jumped in because I wanted to make sure that the voices of the people that I had been serving so many years was really heard and was really at the forefront when decisions were made about housing policy, or education, or how we're creating opportunities for communities to build wealth and families to build wealth, or any of the number of things that government can have an impact on.
What does representative government look like, and what does it mean to you?
Absolutely. Fundamentally, representation only happens when our government is connected to and reflects the voice of the people who are being served. And certainly that means that we have to have represented officials who look like the racial and gender breakdown, the ethnicity breakdown, the wealth distribution, that we have people who are able-bodied and differently abled, that we have folks really represent the fullness of what this state of Connecticut really is in terms of people's homes. So representation matters because I think you can't represent folks whose issues you don't understand. Representation matters because those who are most impacted by things should have the most say in what the good solutions are and the ability to propose and enact solutions to those. And I think we see the failure when we don't have representative government in terms of the ability to meet the needs of all people. Mm-hmm. And so many things have brought greater awareness in this moment when we sit in 2023 about why we need to have representation in the things that our kids are taught in school, why we need to have representation and how we decide where people can live and what kind of housing can be built, why it's important that we have representation when decisions of safety and criminal justice reform are being made, why it was important when the cannabis industry was being launched to have representative voices about how that's going to happen and where those proceeds are going to make an impact and who's going to have an opportunity to be part of that industry. All of these things, Connecticut residents have a vested interest in getting right. And I think getting right means that we have to make sure that all the voices are at the table in order for us to get these things right.
You are someone who has, heard that calling and seen the importance of it and gone into government. How do you think we get more individuals of color into public service? Do you think that people, need a push to run, or they just need, the right tools and keys available to them to make a successful run? Or is it, a little bit of both?
I was going to say, can I pick all of the above as the choice? I do think that we need to see more and more people in there modeling that this can be done and that it's something that folks can see themselves doing. Right, you have to be able to see yourself in something to have that dream of it being for you. So we absolutely have to work really hard to make sure that there are people in there who are modeling. And then I think we have to be thinking really about what are the barriers or the things that get in the way of somebody running, and create those pathways. Mm-hmm. This partnership, CCM and the campaign school, is a great opportunity to bring the kind of information that people need to run, help them think about what those barriers are, and to build a support network. Because I think it's having models, having the right tools in place and access to the resources, building the right relationships. And then I think you have to do it in community with other people who are going to speak your name in rooms that you're not even in, encourage you, give you guidance. And I think that's another thing that the sort of cohort model of a campaign school really brings to the forefront, is that you need to do this with some other folks who've been a little farther down the path, who's got some wisdom and experience, and folks who are going to want to be in it with you as they take their first steps also.
Yeah, they take steps and take it together, and some of those connections, I'm sure, farther down the line would pay some dividends.
The more we diversify who volunteers on campaigns, who gets hired to work in those entry-level campaign roles. And I think we'll recognize that those are all, that's the feeder system. Mm-hmm. And that is the system into the paid jobs. We need diversity in who are the effective campaign managers and field directors and organizers in campaigns. We need to diversify who's doing the communication. It's a whole industry, right? Folks that do communications on campaigns and polling on campaigns. I think the more we diversify that and get people to see that there are real possibility for fulfilling work and jobs in that, it also gets you on the inner circle where you start to rub elbows with these folks who are the candidate, and you start to see, gee, that could be me. I think there's a way in which if you're sort of not interacting with folks who've thrown their hat in the ring to run for office, it feels very far away. It feels like they're sort of a different breed of person. When you actually interact and can see, oh, geez, this is somebody just like me who for some reason got called to want to take on this role and worked really hard at it. And like, that could be me too. And I could be running a campaign. I could be the finance director on a campaign. I could be doing communications on a campaign. I could do field organizing, and maybe you also get that call that I could be the candidate that all those folks are working for.
Yeah, like today's interns and volunteers, can see that the senator or the local politician isn't just a person on TV; that they're a person doing a job, and that could be them in the future, just by virtue of being around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exposure, and also the flip side that those young people, when other people in charge think in the future of, who do I know? it's young and involved, those are the people they're going to think of just by them being involved, even at the kind of entry level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when you've got a diverse set of voices at the table, when the policy decisions are being made around a campaign, I think you get a more robust policy agenda, one that is potentially more reflective of the needs of the community. So it really, I mean, the benefits of really thinking beyond a sort of narrow scope of sort of who's right for these jobs and roles will benefit us in the kinds of public policy that gets passed, in the laws that get passed in our state, and ensure that we're doing things that actually can drive us forward as a state to be the most inclusive place, the place where people feel real opportunity, the place where families want to be, raise their children, grow old. All of these things are important to Connecticut growing as a state and being the place that we really want to be. So I think that representation matters is a huge part of that.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. So you've been at this for a little while now, in public life and just active in general. Does it feel like more doors are open in 2023 than maybe in 2003 or 2013?
I do see real progress. I see, for so many reasons, conversations happening around equity that really weren't happening in 2003 in the same sort of mainstream way that you see them happening now. And I think the nation and the world going through the COVID pandemic was a piece of that, where in lots of ways, the inequities were just laid bare in front of people. Folks who maybe never thought they had to struggle or think about certain issues actually had to think about them. And I think that opened up some things. In the midst of a health pandemic that impacted the entire world, we also had real racial reckoning in this country that I think put equity issues on the front burner in ways that for many of us in the community, they've been front burner for us all along, but I think it centered it for other people in a way that hadn't happened. And so the conversations I hear people having today are much more mainstream than they were, I think, 10 years ago. The way in which local electeds are thinking about equity and inclusion, corporations are thinking about it, nonprofits are thinking about it. I do think that that's a different set of conversations than we've had before. And I think it's our challenge and our call in this moment to make sure that it's not just a moment of conversation, but that it be reflected in sustained change. And that's where I think policymakers and electeds have a real role. The work that folks like Senator Gary Winfield led in the session right following the horrendous murder of George Floyd and so many others as well, led to change on the books of the laws in this state around policing. And that's a way in which you take something from just being a moment of heightened awareness and emotion, and you take it into sustained change that actually can be felt in every community in this state. And I think that's what we have to do in this moment, is make sure that the things that many of us felt called during the pandemic, or because of the racial reckoning around policing and police brutality and many other inequities, results in real change public policy. And that's why I hope that folks who feel really engaged in this moment think about all the ways they can volunteer and get involved in a nonprofit or give money to right causes, but also think about ways in which they might want to be an elected official or want to support elected officials, because I do believe we can make real sustained change in this moment if we keep at it. And the fear is if we don't, that we'll fall back into old ways and think back as, remember that moment in 2022, 2023, where there was, awareness, and it'll be sort of looked back on as opposed to being able to talk about it as a moment of real sustained change.
One of the things that we do at Representation Matters is we have local officials who have, gone through elections and are working, like yourself and others. give advice and kind of pull back the veil, as it were, on service and what actually goes into it, kind of the nuts and bolts, and that it's not all easy and it's not all just winning that one election. So obviously, when we talked to you last, it was before an election and you were running in that last election and you didn't win. How do you deal with, not winning and, picking yourself up after that? And do you see yourself running again in the future?
So how do you deal with that? I think my way of dealing with anytime that I've had something that I've really thrown myself into and thought was the thing that I wanted more than anything, and then it didn't work out in that way, is to try to step back from it and hold on to something that just sustains me through most things in my life, which is to believe that things come together in the way that they're supposed to, even when I can't sort of see in the moment. And so my getting out there and running, although it didn't result in me being elected in that particular election, did have impacts in terms of the kinds of things that I was able to talk about, in terms of the new folks that listened to my voice and said, wow, let me think a little bit differently, and that now have invited me to the table to talk about things, whether it's around housing policy or education policy or things. So I think you have to, in the moment of a loss, I think you have to sit back and reflect on all the lessons learned from it. And I think you have to sit back and think about sort of why was this placed in my path at this moment in life, and what am I supposed to do with it? And for me, it's been a real reflection on, okay, so in this moment where I've got an opportunity, I've got some people's attention, this is a moment to really think about how am I making sure that people are making good housing policy decisions, and how are we thinking about providing public education in the state in the best possible ways. And I can do that whether I'm an elected official or not. And so I think I would encourage people, even in that moment of what might feel like rejection, to think about how to use it to continue fighting for the things that drove you to get involved in the beginning. And so as long as I stay centered on that, I think that's important. I also think, though, that the opportunity presents a whole lot of opportunity for soul searching and to think about, is this something that I would go all in again? And I think you should take the time to think about that coming off of an election, and do that reflection and take stock, and maybe not in the immediate days, because the immediate days you just want to rest. But once you've gotten yourself a little bit of time to really do that soul searching and think about, would you do it again? And I don't have an answer for you on that at this moment, because so much of politics and elected office is also, what opportunities present and where that candidate is personally at that moment. So I don't say no to anything. I don't close doors. I think that what I can tell you and commit, I will always be working toward, is how to make Connecticut the most inclusive and the strongest possible place for families to want to live, raise their children, grow old, and I'll certainly be in the struggles with folks on making sure that we're moving the needle forward on that. Whether that's elected or non-elected ways.
So running sounds like it has value, the process of going through that has value to you in your life as a public servant, whether or not you ended up winning that election, that process of meeting the people, talking about the issues, was educational and changing for you.
Life-changing. I can't say, I believe that there are people who from little childhood looked at elected office and said, that's going to be me one day. I believe they exist out there. That was not me. And so this is not necessarily a life course that I could have anticipated I was going to be on. I would not trade it for a moment that I put myself out there, talked about the things I wanted to talk about, met incredible people. And, I was running in a statewide election, so incredible people all over the state, saw corners of the state, and just amazing things all across our state. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I think
a worthwhile experience regardless of the outcome. Yeah.
Absolutely. That said, people thinking about wanting to get into this, I do think need to take real stock about whether it's right for them at that moment. It is an all-in kind of endeavor if you want to take it seriously and want to have a real shot at winning. And so it is all-consuming. And if you're somebody who, like I am, I actually care about people and what people think and say. You gotta toughen your skin and be willing to sort of tune out some of the noise that's out there and stay very focused on why you're in it, what you're doing. I encourage people to surround themselves with people who are going to tell them the truth, and who are going to also be their soft spot to land and encouragement in the moments when it's frustrating. And find yourself the right team of folks who know what they're doing and can advise, and then you got to be all in. Yeah. And you got to want to, eat, sleep, and breathe and everything for that time. And I think if you do that and you keep yourself focused on why you're doing it and what's important, I think there'll be a lot of good lessons to learn out of that at the end of the day. And hopefully you'll be successful.
Great. Well, Karen, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We certainly appreciate it. And hopefully hearing some of your stories has inspired someone to maybe come to Representation Matters and get involved in public life for themselves.
I hope they will. Absolutely. I hope they do.
We'd like to thank our guests, Patty Russo and Karen Dubois-Walton. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH, 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for a CCM chat series on our YouTube page.
America was founded on the principle of representative government, but communities of color are marginalized in this process. If you're interested in running for office or serving on a local board or commission, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities and the Campaign School at Yale are hosting Representation Matters, a free remote 2-day training session with informative workshops and panels of experts to give you the tools to make this a reality. Visit ccmcares.com for info on how to